Hi, my name is Jessica Fossum, and I'm an instructor of research psychology in the psychology department at SPU. My faith really informs how I teach and how I research because it's a really central part of my identity. So for example, in my research, I research quantitative psychology, so statistics and numbers and patterns, and the whole point of doing all of that is to explore variation in our world and in people. So for that, for me, I like to think of it as what kinds of questions can we ask to discover how God made this world? What kinds of questions can we ask that will benefit people? What kinds of questions can we ask that will be most beneficial for society? So those kinds of research questions are what get me excited about research, and I feel that here I get to bring my faith into that. It's really my reason why I do this kind of work and why in classrooms I teach statistics. It may seem like one of the just rudimentary skills that we have or something that doesn't really matter as much, but for me that's how we can see psychology as a science and how we can see our answers to our questions coming together with statistics. And I think that it's really important to be able to have good statistical skills and knowledge in order to really be able to answer our questions and trust our results and conclusions. One thing for me with my own research and looking at things in classrooms is I want to make sure that all of our findings are replicable. So psychology went through a replication crisis a while ago. Yeah, the replication crisis in psychology happened about 10 years ago when we were realizing papers were getting published that may not actually have findings that we should trust and believe. One of the key papers in this was an ESP study, so believing that extrasensory perception was real. And this paper, in fact, found significant findings that was indeed true. And that sort of made us question a lot of things in published research. So before we thought, okay, if something can make it through peer review and get published as a paper, then that must be something that's absolutely true and unquestionable. But then we were realizing that maybe some things like the ESP study we can't replicate. So if we wanted to do the same study using a new sample of participants, we might not actually find that those things are true effects. So this whole idea brought a lot of psychology studies into question and had a lot of call for folks in quantitative psychology and really every area of psychology to think through, can we try and replicate some of these more famous studies? And what ended up happening was only about half of the studies that they tried to replicate, they actually could find a significant effect. So they used statistics, they used the best methods they possibly could, tried to replicate papers exactly where these papers said they found these effects, like ESP. And then they tried to do it again, and they weren't able to replicate it or find those effects anymore. So what that calls into question is maybe our studies are underpowered. Maybe there weren't enough people to truly detect these effects. Maybe people were doing some questionable research practices, like looking at their data until they find a significant effect, or removing certain people because they make it not significant. And so the replication crisis has sort of brought a new mindset to psychology, questioning this misconception that every published study is exactly perfect and really making us better scientists. And for me, my faith informs really wanting to have valid results for our studies in order to most help people. And in my classes, I just really appreciate students asking good questions and wanting to contribute to the greater good of society, whether that's informed by faith or really any reason to ask these questions.